Hello, I'm Dee, and I'm going to talk about resin and finishing up pieces that you've made in resin. One of the problems I have sometimes is that the surface isn't completely smooth, so I have to sand it and then polish. I put some varnish in the end just to make it shiny again. It means that you can always fix anything that doesn't come out of the mold exactly as you wanted. It's also very good for when you have a back like this, which is raised all around, and you can do two things. One thing is pour more resin and dome it. The other thing is to sand off the edges and then apply some varnish. I've done both. It depends on whether or not you want your piece to be thicker. This front here was it wasn't very smooth. I've already applied one coat of varnish, but it still feels rough. So I'm going to show you how to sand it. What I use is this. I have a big plastic tub, and I put this is the sandpaper is wet and dry paper, which means that you can stick it in water. It's waterproof and it'll work perfectly. And then I grab my piece, and this is inside water so that the dust from the resin as you sand won't go into the air, and you don't have to breathe it in because it's not very healthy. So this is a bit like working with stones after you cut them, which is you sand, but you keep moving the piece around. You never sand the same place twice. I am twisting and turning it. I sand the middle, and then the middle, and then go toward the edges and turn and turn and turn. The sandpaper I'm using is 400 grit, which is usually enough. You can sand it with the 400 grit paper and then varnish, and it'll be fine. If you feel like you need a smoother finish, you can move up to a 600 grit, but that's about as much as you might need. If I was working with silver to pre-polish and everything, I'd go up to 1200, but in this case it's not necessary. Okay, so as soon as your finger goes through and it feels smooth to the touch, then you can stop sanding. This is sometimes a long and boring process, but it's actually not as bad because the resin comes off really quickly, which is why you have to keep moving, because it's easy to make a mistake and ruin the shape, the doming shape of your piece. Okay, so this is pretty much done. It's enough that it'll be smooth when I apply the varnish. So what kind of varnish do I use? I'm just gonna wipe it down. And why do you need to varnish? The problem is that it becomes sort of opaque, so you don't see the picture very clearly. I have one that I sanded earlier that's already dry, and you can see it's all white. So what kind of varnish can you use? I tend to use two kinds. It sort of depends on how long I want to wait and how thick or thin a coat I want to use. You can use just plain. You can use plain nail polish. Simple as that. You know, any inexpensive kind will do. You don't have to spend a lot of money on it. Just plain polish. Or you can use this, which is for glass. It's a special varnish for for glass, and the problem is it's very thick, you know, and it doesn't spread very well, so I tend to mix it up with the solvent. Okay, so it's the amount varies, maybe, I don't know, 10% solvent, sometimes 20, it depends. Because if you don't mix it with the solvent, then this will streak and you can't get a smooth finish. So if you want to do it quickly, just use the nail polish. Another kind of nail polish that you can use is this one, which is a gel look. It's a little thicker, and you can put a thick layer of polish on it, and it'll spread really well, leave no streaks. And it's usually a thicker layer than regular nail polish. So, how to varnish, or polish, or no, in this case varnish. I usually use this. It's the kind of blue tech type thing, which is yellow, but it's the same kind of product, you know. It's very flexible, and you can pull it and stretch it, and it's used to, you know, attach posters to the walls and stuff like that. So I just put a little bit underneath, just so it'll stick to the table, and there will be room beneath it, so it won't, if the polish runs, it'll drip onto the table. I usually use a plastic surface underneath, so it won't ruin the table itself, but and it won't move on to the back, which could leave a lot of cleanup to do. So that's one, and this is another, and I'm going to put it here. Okay, so nail polish first. Ooh. Okay. Alright, so I don't put a lot of it. Tend to start in the middle and then work my way to the edges, so that there's less risk of it dripping or falling over because there's too much. Now I work my way around, and as you can see, that white blurry thing is disappearing very quickly. And then you just let it dry, and if necessary you give it a second coat just to make it stronger. The other varnish needs a paintbrush. I've already added a little bit of the solvent onto here, and if it feels like it's too thick, I generally will just put the brush in the solvent and then brush it on top of the varnish. It's not fully mixed, and it's probably not the best solution, but it actually works if you want to remove some stubborn streaks. So this is just a thicker varnish. It also smells a lot, which is why I don't use it as often. And then there's the cleanup problem, which is that just like with the resin, you should use gloves to work with this, and then you have to put some of the, let me move this up a bit so I have more room. You have to put some of the solvent on a paper towel or a cloth and then wipe your brush. Otherwise, if you let the varnish dry on the brush, it'll get really hard and you can't use it again. The problem with these products, both the solvent and the varnish, is that they have a very, very strong smell, so you need good ventilation to use this sort of thing. So, and you know, as you can see, they say it's toxic, so you should also wear gloves. Now they need to dry, which is pretty fast, but it's a few minutes. So I'm going to show you other problems that you can come up with resin. I've started doing these paper pendants, which means, I'll give you an example or two. I just print out a paper image, then I color it in with the Copic markers, and then you have to seal the paper very well with white glue, wood glue. You know, some people dilute it in water. I tried that once. It didn't work very well, so I just use it straight from the bottle. White glue, 2 or 3 coats to really seal the paper. And then you put it in the resin. This is a very thin square pendant, and as you can see in the back, the color from the Copic markers, which are alcohol based, and they run through the paper to the other side, so you always see it like this, which means that you may need to create a backing for your pendant if you don't want to see that. Here I did a very simple thing, which is just paint it on with black nail polish. So, you know, it's the same thing, right? Another image in the front. This one already has a bail. I've added a bail with some rivets, and just painted it with black nail polish at the back. I did this because the mold for this picture means that the picture is right side up. When it's right side down, like, where is it? Like these, you can add, for example, glitter at the back, and then you can pour more resin over the glitter or not, depends on whether you want it smooth or not. Here I didn't add any more glitter, so this is sort of textured, and then I just added some polish. Here I added more resin, so it's smooth. It's very smooth. It's a different approach. And the problem was that this is the pendants I made when I tried to dilute the glue, and as you can see, there are some blotches there from where the paper wasn't completely sealed, and it made all sorts of ugly, you know, sort of greasy like areas in the paper, and this one as well, unfortunately, all over the face. Otherwise I'd be able to fix it somehow, but on the face there's very little I can do. I've done some since, as you saw, and this is another example which turned out fine. This one was also facing down, so in order to put the pieces on top, I actually applied some glue. I stuck all the clock parts on it, let it dry, and then turned it upside down into the resin. So the parts were already attached to the paper before the image went into the resin, and then I applied the glitter at the back, and I did another layer of resin on top. Although this one had a different problem, which is it wasn't completely straight. So one side is domed and the other side isn't, which means I will have to sand this down until, you know, both sides match. Or I could add more resin, but I don't have much of a much height on this side, so it may tip over and then end up ruining the front of the pendant, which I don't want to do. So once again, I'll grab this and move this to the side a little, and then I will just put this on the sandpaper, and be careful to raise the side that doesn't have as much resin, which is this side, doesn't come into contact with the sandpaper. And you just do this for a while until you've worn it down enough, which would take a while. It's just to give you an idea of what to do when you find these sort of problems. Okay, so just let me clean my hands and go back here. So the nail polish one is done, and I can just take it out. And as you can see, it's never a perfect finish, but it's pretty good. I mean, when I pass my finger over it, I don't really sense any texture, so I think that'll be usable. The other ones dry as well. Doesn't take very long. Though over here you can still see that there was a little bit of a streak here. I didn't apply it all the way to the edge, so I may have to do a little bit more with that. But the rest is pretty good. You know, it's not exactly mirror finish. For that you may need to apply like a second coat in a different direction maybe, until you get the result you need. But you know, it's a way to fix something that you know, it didn't turn out very well the first time, and like this you don't have to throw it away and try again. You just spend a little time fixing the problem and you can use the pendant. Okay, so that's it for me for now. Thanks for listening. Bye.